Powerful people do not perceive the world through the same lens as you do. They navigate within a complex structure of formal and informal agreements, subtle value exchanges, and unstated obligations. They rarely label this as mere friendship. They recognize it as leverage. And that is the foundational principle of all social elevation. To establish connection with positions of authority, you must comprehend that no bond is ever truly neutral. Every association either incrementally raises or definitively lowers your standing within the invisible hierarchy that silently governs all human interactions. Most individuals falter here because they engage with the powerful as if they were ordinary people, rather than as components of a self-sustaining system. They mistakenly believe that simple affinity is sufficient. They believe that admiration, respect, or even exceptional performance will unlock opportunities. It will not. Authority operates according to its own distinct linguistic rules, and you must acquire total fluency in that language. Machiavelli understood this fundamental truth centuries ago, when he observed that influence with rulers was not granted based on moral goodness, but was earned strictly through demonstrable utility. To be genuinely useful to an individual above you is to successfully integrate yourself as a functional component of their operational machinery. To be externally admirable but strategically irrelevant is to be functionally invisible. Therefore, the first principle is unequivocal. Never approach authority from a position of supplication. Approach from a position of providing solutions. The precise moment you reveal a deficit, you have already forfeited your strategic status. The moment you introduce demonstrable value, you instantly transform the entire dynamic. Individuals holding authority are perpetually surrounded by consumers of their time, flattering advisors, opportunistic sycophants masquerading as dependable associates. They instantaneously sense when a new presence contributes measurable strength to their enterprise, or, conversely, diminishes it. Your strategic objective is to position yourself as a stabilizing force, an individual who quietly facilitates improvements, enhances smoothness, and increases resilience. You do not engage in competition with their authority. You function to complete it. But to successfully achieve that, you must adhere to the second principle. Observe rigorously before initiating any action. The most critical error a social aspirant makes is acting prematurely, speaking excessively, or revealing too much too soon. Machiavelli explicitly wrote that one must study potential threats, similar to how a general meticulously studies the terrain before committing to a decisive battle. Powerful figures frequently conceal themselves behind elaborate public personae, yet their true desires, latent fears, and inherent vulnerabilities invariably manifest through subtle indications. Their vocal tone, their timing in responses, whom they choose to grant attention to, or whom they consistently interrupt. Your initial objective is not yet to generate an impression. Your objective is to perform a diagnosis, because once you accurately identify their most profound underlying craving, whether it is public affirmation, unyielding loyalty, light entertainment, or sincere veneration, you acquire the capacity to deliver it in a form they are structurally unable to resist. And that inherently leads to the third principle. Reflect their environment, not your own. Those in positions of authority intrinsically expect familiarity, not the discomfort of confronting an outsider. They naturally trust individuals who effectively reflect their core values back to them, even if the reflection is subtly delivered. You do not engage in outright mimicry. You engage in calculated synchronization. If their operational style is ruthlessly pragmatic, you adopt a thoroughly practical demeanor. If they place a high value on exclusivity, you communicate using the precise language of rarity and exceptionalism. This is not an act of deception. It is an act of rhythm matching. When you successfully synchronize with their established rhythm, they cease to feel they are engaging with a complete stranger. They begin to genuinely believe that you possess intrinsic comprehension. And in that pivotal moment, your prior status as an outsider begins its inevitable dissolution. But mere synchronization is insufficient. Which brings us to the fourth principle. Maintain an element of ambiguity in your disclosed value. You must never allow your complete capabilities to be fully known. When you openly disclose everything you are capable of offering, you immediately transition into a readily evaluated product, and products are fundamentally replaceable. Machiavelli's profound insight was in recognizing that a controlled, partial disclosure of information creates powerful demand. Your goal is for them to intuit that you possess greater underlying depth than you publicly demonstrate, wider influence than you openly display, and more extensive strategic connections than you choose to admit. When they sense that there is a significant element you are intentionally withholding, curiosity instantly replaces indifference. You transition from being one of the many available options to one of the essential few. Yet this maneuver must be executed with extreme precision because the fifth principle dictates: project humility in aspiration, yet ferocity in execution. Those in positions of authority fundamentally disdain the blatant, open pursuit of status. It serves as an unwelcome reminder of their own difficult ascent, the years they spent actively struggling, and they prefer to avoid such a direct reflection. Consequently, you must consistently project an image of composure, unwavering patience, and indifference regarding advancement. However, when strategic opportunities surface, you must act decisively, even if it requires ruthlessness. Powerful figures immediately recognize this essential duality: constraint paired with definitive purpose. It signals that you fully comprehend the rules of the environment, yet choose to engage with your own calibrated rhythm. Then comes the sixth principle: create situations where powerful figures actively compete for your allegiance. Nothing serves to flatter the ego of a commanding figure more deeply than the belief that a valuable associate has willingly chosen their service above all others. If your allegiance is perceived as automatic and guaranteed, its intrinsic value is severely diminished. You must meticulously position yourself as an asset worthy of being actively courted. The key is to generate a minor degree of friction, not outright defiance, but demonstrable independence. If other influential figures seek your time or respect, ensure that fact is subtly conveyed. It effectively elevates your perceived price without requiring explicit verbal negotiation. As Machiavelli cautiously advised, those who make themselves too readily available to a single master eventually become entirely disposable. The powerful meticulously safeguard anything that is challenging to possess. And the seventh principle: learn the strategic transformation of mere flattery into functional strategy. Empty, generalized praise acts as poison in these circles. The powerful hear it constantly. What distinguishes your praise is rigorous precision. Instead of a generic declaration like "you are absolutely brilliant," articulate: your timing on that critical decision was perfectly exact. No one else could have accurately read the situation that clearly. Your compliment now transmits genuine insight. It demonstrates that you grasp the specific qualities they use to define their self-worth: discerning judgment, intellectual capacity, and situational command. When you praise the demonstrably correct qualities, you actively reinforce their idealized self-image. And when you reinforce their idealized self-image, they psychologically associate that positive feeling directly with your presence. But you must never disregard the eighth principle. Never permit your personal ambition to overshadow theirs. Even if you possess greater inherent talent, sharper insight, or superior capability, you cannot display it too openly or carelessly. Authority possesses a profoundly fragile ego structure. Machiavelli warned that those who appear to directly threaten a ruler's inherent superiority will be decisively eliminated, not because they pose an immediate physical threat, but because they cause the ruler to feel strategically vulnerable. The mastery lies in artfully concealing your true strength behind a veneer of respectful deference. Allow your achievements to appear as if they are merely serving the direct benefit of the superior figure. The astute social aspirant discreetly conceals their intellectual acuity inside a framework of obedience. Authority reliably protects those who project unyielding loyalty and ruthlessly destroys those who appear to be equals. Now, once you have successfully earned proximity to the central figure, the ninth principle becomes critically important. Cultivate alliances horizontally, not merely vertically. Many aspirants become overly obsessed with generating a positive impression on the person at the absolute pinnacle. However, the true leverage lies within the encompassing circle around them. The crucial gatekeepers, the executive assistants, the trusted advisors, and the confidential inner circle. These individuals profoundly influence public perception, control essential access points, and exert significant influence through private communication with the central figure. They are often demonstrably more dangerous and more strategically valuable than the figurehead themselves. Machiavelli would have correctly identified them as the invisible sovereigns, the true custodians of influence operating behind the titular authority. Discreetly cultivate positive relationships with them, offer them small, mutually beneficial advantages, secure their active protection. They will effectively promote your name upward without requiring any explicit request from you. The 10th principle: utilize expressed gratitude as a strategic instrument, not as a mark of subordination. When an authoritative figure grants you assistance, never respond with the abject subservience of a retainer. Respond with the demeanor of an equal who actively acknowledges and values the mutual exchange. A subservient individual articulates "thank you" once and considers the matter resolved. A strategist demonstrates appreciation through the reciprocal provision of value. Perhaps you later resolve a persistent issue for them or furnish them with proprietary information that significantly aids their established objectives. Gratitude that is consistently reinforced by tangible action fundamentally transforms the power dynamic. You transition from being a simple recipient of aid to being a valuable contributor, and contributors are demonstrably difficult to dismiss. But let us not overlook the 11th principle: master the sophisticated art of subtle dissent. Total, unvarying submission invariably invites the superior's contempt. You must periodically exhibit resistance, politely, intelligently, in a manner that generates intrigue rather than direct threat. A minor, strategically chosen disagreement here, a quiet, non-threatening defiance there. It signals inherent individuality, not explicit insubordination. It communicates to the powerful that you possess a strong, independent resolve, and individuals lacking strong resolve cannot be genuinely trusted. Machiavelli noted that those who engage in flattery without established boundaries quickly forfeit their credibility. Conversely, those who possess the wisdom to articulate a careful, reasoned no gain respect. The critical skill is to express disagreement in a manner that appears to be protecting their self-interest, rather than directly challenging their authority. The 12th principle flows directly from that. Control the narrative surrounding your visibility. Exposure is intensely appealing, but often lethal if handled carelessly. When you appear too frequently in public view, your novelty and perceived worth diminish. When you appear infrequently, yet are consistently remembered, you transition into a near-mythic entity. Strategically withdraw after each significant success. Retreat into a period of silence. Allow external parties to actively circulate your name and reputation. The powerful inherently desire those who appear judicious and selective with their presence. It effectively mirrors their own highly valued behavior. The less immediately accessible you project yourself to be, the more intensely they will pursue your attention. And the 13th principle, the most crucial of all, always conduct yourself as though you belong there. Even before you have formally secured a legitimate place at the negotiating table, your posture, your vocal tone, and your overall presence must project absolute certainty. Insecurity emits a stronger negative signal than arrogance. When you enter an environment populated by authority, you do not passively wait for explicit acceptance. You proceed with the demeanor that acceptance is an absolute given. Machiavelli would assert that fortune preferentially favors the individual who already projects the image of being inherently favored. Authority respects self-assurance that requires no external confirmation. When you proceed with the innate certainty that you belong, others will commence believing it, often before they can articulate the reason why. And all of these interconnected principles revolve around one single truth. Establishing connection with power is not about the pretense of being more than you are. It is fundamentally about the absolute mastery of the dance of perception. It is about offering your presence as a form of value instead of pleading, precision instead of generalized flattery, and controlled stability instead of chaos. The powerful are not actively seeking equals. They are actively seeking reflections of their own enduring dominance. And if you can successfully mirror that dominance without sacrificing your own fundamental control, you will not only establish connections, you will construct an architecture of influence that expands discreetly, invisibly, until the inevitable day arrives when you no longer need to actively climb. Because by that point, you have already secured your position. But even securing the position is an illusion. In the domain of power, there is no such thing as an enduring final state. Every inner circle, every strategic partnership, every bond is inherently subject to change. What propels you upward today has the potential to utterly destroy you tomorrow. Machiavelli grasped this inherent instability with unparalleled clarity. His enduring secret was not merely understanding the mechanics of ascent, but understanding how to maintain elevation without transitioning into a primary target. That is the unseen continuation of these principles. How to maintain your strategic connections as vital, continuously valuable, and strategically aligned without ever becoming structurally dependent on them. The next principle is nuanced yet critical. Never become strategically predictable. The precise moment powerful figures can completely anticipate your actions, they lose all genuine interest, and sustained interest is what guarantees their continued engagement. Predictability is fatal to fascination. You must periodically modulate your tone, your primary direction, or your energy just sufficiently to retain a degree of unreadability. That does not equate to generating chaos. It signifies possessing the functional capacity to surprise them without ever causing them genuine alarm. Perhaps you are the composed figure who suddenly introduces a groundbreaking proposal, or the quiet observer who acts decisively when absolutely no one anticipates it. That calculated spark of unpredictability creates a powerful emotional tether. They will retain a memory of you as the associate who could always be counted on to disrupt the inherent monotony of their existence. But unpredictability is only effective if it remains grounded in absolute self-control. Therefore, balance it with the next principle. Learn the art of the strategic disappearance. Silence functions as authority's most reliable confederate. When you intentionally vanish for an extended period, people naturally begin to speculate about your current location, your next significant undertaking, and whether you have successfully advanced your position elsewhere. That intrinsic curiosity keeps your reputation actively circulating. The powerful respect those who possess the wisdom to withdraw strategically. It signals profound independence. You are not passively orbiting anyone else's gravitational center. You possess your own established nucleus. When you choose to reappear, return with demonstrable momentum. A significant achievement, an actionable strategic insight, or a critical piece of intelligence that unequivocally justifies your prior absence. Every reappearance must feel like a deliberate, calculated event, not a random coincidence. And this connects to an even deeper layer. Your public social projection must consistently appear marginally greater than your current verifiable status. Project an image just above your current placement, never below it. Individuals rarely extend invitations to those they perceive as beneath their social or professional level. They extend invitations to those who possess the capacity to subtly elevate the perceived value of the room. If you are still relatively unknown, conduct yourself as if you are widely recognized. If you operate predominantly within restricted circles, articulate your thoughts with the composed certainty of an individual accustomed to operating within vastly larger ones. This generates what Machiavelli might have termed anticipated prestige. People begin to treat you as the person you are actively becoming, not strictly as the person you currently are. And when they do that consistently, your perceived reality eventually converges with your projected image. Nevertheless, there is inherent danger in constructing impressions, which introduces another principle. Never directly compete for immediate public attention. Permit others to completely exhaust their resources, performing elaborate displays for the primary spotlight, while you diligently construct quiet credibility behind the scenes. In every structured hierarchy, there exist two distinct categories of individuals: the performers and the architects. Performers actively seek loud validation. Architects meticulously construct the essential stage structure. The powerful fundamentally respect the architects, those who reliably influence final outcomes without requiring explicit personal recognition. If another individual desperately requires the public credit, willingly grant it to them. It is a perishable, short-term currency. Influence is enduring, long-term wealth. The most strategically adept operators in history never explicitly demanded public acknowledgement. They rendered themselves absolutely indispensable, and that singular status was completely sufficient. And yet, the state of being indispensable also harbors its own unique hazards. It can render you overly visible, too critically necessary, and therefore a perceived threat to the central authority. Therefore, you must master what I define as the art of controlled usefulness. Provide assistance only sufficiently to be highly valued, but never to the extent that your removal becomes functionally impossible. Because when you are wholly irreplaceable, you are simultaneously intolerable. Authority fundamentally resents dependency that does not strictly serve its own interests. Instead, periodically rotate the form of your offered value. Offer pragmatic solutions, critical introductions, unique perspectives, but never simultaneously. Cultivate the pervasive feeling that your utility is continuously evolving. Machiavelli would have argued, a ruler tolerates those who help him secure victory, not those who serve as a constant reminder that he cannot secure victory without their presence. Now, let us transition into the politics of emotional interaction, the complex terrain where most highly ambitious individuals fail. The higher your ascent, the less objective logic governs the underlying relationships. The dynamic entirely transitions into emotional economics. Powerful figures do not primarily seek absolute truth. They seek psychological comfort, expertly disguised as profound insight. They do not desire contradiction. They desire reinforcement expertly flavored with a minor challenge. They desire to feel intellectually superior after engaging in communication with you, never diminished. Therefore, the way you frame your ideas becomes your ultimate source of authority. If you find it necessary to express disagreement, articulate it as a concept of enhancement. That is an exceptional point. Perhaps the inclusion of this specific dimension could render the entire strategy absolutely unstoppable. You are not actively opposing the idea. You are effectively amplifying it. You are subtly shaping their cognitive process without triggering their inherent defensive mechanisms. That is the precise mechanism by which influence operates, through careful emotional calibration, not through overt intellectual subjugation. And because this dynamic is true, the next rule becomes non-negotiable. Always remain the calmest individual within the environment. Authority is magnetically drawn to profound emotional stillness. The individual with the loudest voice may temporarily command immediate attention, but the individual with the quietest demeanor often commands the deep respect. When others are consumed by panic, maintain your composure. When they engage in heated argument, listen intently. When they react spontaneously, you analyze methodically. Emotional stillness actively radiates a sense of control. And in any hierarchical structure, control possesses an undeniable magnetic force. Machiavelli taught that fear is not exclusively enforced through the application of violence. Occasionally, it is successfully earned through calm, reasoned unpredictability. When people are unable to accurately gauge your intended reaction, they proceed with extreme caution. Your consistent restraint transforms into its own unique form of authority. Flowing from that is the next principle, perhaps one of the most psychologically difficult to execute. Make powerful figures feel emotionally secure within their own inherent vulnerability. Every single person in a position of authority carries underlying, concealed doubts. They perpetually worry about impending treachery, loss of relevance, and total collapse of control. Your critical task is not to exploit those insecurities directly. It is to subtly reassure them through the consistent demonstration of trustworthiness. Permit them to feel that you possess comprehensive understanding without judgment. Share your key insights in private settings, never in public view. The greater the belief someone has that their inherent weaknesses are entirely safe with you, the stronger they will emotionally bind themselves to your continued presence. They may never verbally acknowledge this bond, but they will commence actively defending you in environments you have never physically entered. That is the definition of true social leverage. When individuals holding authority actively protect you because you hold the key to their unspoken anxieties, a critical inversion occurs. Never allow them to become your exclusive focal point. If your entire life revolves solely around these authoritative figures, they will immediately sense profound dependency. Dependency is intrinsically repulsive to those who autonomously control critical resources. You must rigorously maintain other diverse alliances, even with individuals situated beneath your current level. Influence functions through multi-layered networks. If you maintain respect across multiple strata, upward, horizontally, and downward, no single connection can entirely define your total worth.